let's try this one more again.
Testing the game.
God, I hope you can hear me. No BS, OBS, camera zoomed in, and the chat is lit. Stay tuned in. Like Zach Morris, I got the tension like the cool kids. I do's this, homie. I thought you knew this. If you didn't, how you do? I had to prove it. Thanks for watching. What's everybody's favorite topic? Leave a comment in the chat, and please refrain from gossip. Stop it. If you hating, there's no debating. Promise, I'm going up like Hakeem. I can't wait to block you. Sorry, nah, dog, cause this a party. Get your popcorn ready. We about to get it started. I'm super grateful. Thank you all for being with me. How we looking? Am I good?
Sitting pretty.
I'm elated that you would take time to kick it with me. And I ain't famous, so I'm grateful for the subs you give in. Shout out to Shadow. I know my guy is always listening, and I appreciate the bits. Fire emojis pimping. Let's get it. I'ma give you what you came to see. Just hit this follow button for me and we can proceed. An OG Child's High class of 03. Shout out to everybody back home. And all of y'all that's in the stream, I appreciate you. Shit. All right, take two. Mic check. 1, 2, 1, 2. If anybody's still in the chat, let me know that you can please hear me. God, I hope you can hear me. Not sure what happened the first time. That's why we should run these tests. Let's see. See if anybody's back with the kid. Comms check. Let me know. Voice of an angel. Shout out. Appreciate you, man. Yeah. All right, all right.
We testing the game. Oh yeah.
Cool. Fedman, thank you so much. Miss Ross, I appreciate you as well. I'm not sure what happened exactly. I think that we made a settings change the last time we were all together, and maybe that messed things up. I might have inserted plugs in different ports. I don't know if that's what she said. You could probably make that joke yourself if you want to. But we're back. Ladies and gentlemen, we are back. We're back. We're back. Jill! Shout out to Shadow in the chat. I'm not sure if Mom's is on. She texted me a minute ago. Let's see, we'll hit her back. You coming? Let's see what she says. I know she's super interested in the read. I'm trying to get this mic thing lined up. That'll work. There she is. It's cutting in and out. Cut it out. Is that happening for everybody? Damn. If that's true, I think it might be your Wi-Fi, darling. Might be your Wi-Fi. I don't know. Shadow, Fedma, Miss Ross, I need you to co-sign if that's happening on your end too. All right, cool. We'll take that. Bang. We're off to a rocky start this morning. Speaking of the Rockies, how you like that segue? I had the privilege of being in Denver, Colorado for the first time. Denver, Colorado. That John Denver was full of shit, man. No, didn't really have a chance to see much of Denver, quite frankly. As some of you might know, I was at a conference, an EdTech conference, on behalf of H5P Group, H5P in the house. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Shout out again to Fedman and anyone else that might be watching from the team. Love y'all. But no, Colorado was cool. At least the convention was cool. Had a good time of it. Gave everybody kind of the show. If anyone sees this that was there, wonderful. What Wi-Fi? Maybe that's the problem. I'm not sure where you're located, Ma. I don't know if you're at the house or if you're at RC. You let me know. But anyway, and then I had the privilege of flying out to Los Angeles, California. Shout out, shout out. Got to hang out with the fam bam there. Shout out to my brother. And my mom and dad also was able to come on out. We only had a couple of days together, sadly. But we made the most of it. And it was so wonderful to be together. And I love y'all. And I'm looking forward to the next time that we can all be together. That's kind of it. While I was in LA. We got a chance to see a couple of movies, or at least one movie. Gave us the voice and button version. My guy, shout out to A&T. What up, though? Yeah, man. I think it was the voice that I thought of first, and then I remembered, I have a button for this. That's how that all went down. No, last time we were together, I told y'all I wanted to watch Oppenheimer, and I was hopeful we could all see it together, but we didn't. But that's all right. Some of us did. And I'm going to give you my my take on that. And then I'm going to mention another movie that I saw. But before we get into all that, there was something else to mention or share with you all. I made a record after I came back from LA. What do you know? Boom. So there you go. It's available on the SoundCloud. Some of you have already heard it. It's no big deal, really. It's a throwaway, kind of, sort of. But it was inspired based on events. You might be wondering, why the Ninja Turtles? Well, the beginning of the beat that I found, it was actually an old beat that I had on my phone. I was really bored in the airport. I spent a lot of time in the airports throughout my journey. And I was just sitting there bored, and so I started listening to old beats that I had saved. And this one started with, I think, a producer tag, and it was like, Mikey! And the way it came out, I was like, oh, it reminds me of like the Turtles. It would be like Michelangelo. And so there was a mild reference to the Turtles, and then I put some movie scenes in there to make it kind of cool. I thought you were Leonardo. There you go. Shout out to y'all. It is, as I say, I didn't make the producer tag. That's how the beat started. So that's what came of it. And I know we talk about this a lot, but Midjourney, if you're not using it, you're snoozing it. It's great. Midjourney helped create the artwork. I actually came up with I was able to mirror the font from the TNMT font. It worked out. Anyway, enough of that. If you want to go listen to it, it's available on SoundCloud. Shameless plug. Bang. But let's get into this movie review, shall we? Yeah. So we saw Oppenheimer. Yeah? Now, I would guess that this thing is going to take home a couple of trophies. I'm guessing that they're going to give away some Oscars. And it's probably deserving of that. Let me say this before I go any further. The acting was stellar. Sure, the directing was also great. The movie itself, I wanted more. I'm sorry. I did. I wanted more. It was long, quite long, and there just wasn't enough for me. I think it was a little overly hyped, and when that happens, oftentimes I'm just a little disappointed. There were just so many scenes, and I love dialogue. It wasn't that the dialogue wasn't enough to carry it. It just, I don't know. I liked it, didn't love it. Not sure what you're referring to, shout out, but there you go. Appreciate you. So now, should you see it? Absolutely. I did not see it in IMAX. I don't know if that would have had any impact or difference. Neil deGrasse gave Nolan a pass, but said in real life when the bomb went off, it was actually daytime. Ooh, shout out to Neil deGrasse Tyson. But he said all the attention to detail was great. Nolan does a really good job, and I'm sure his team and all of the people that are making this film, it takes a village. But I just wasn't blown away, pun intended. Yeah, I just wasn't. It was good. It was good. It just wasn't great. And again, the acting, superb. I love almost there's a lot of wonderful actors and actresses in this film. But that's it. I'm not going to harp. Go see it. Tell me how you feel. Maybe you feel differently. Everybody's entitled. It's not that it's not good. It just wasn't. It didn't live up to the hype in my mind. Did you miss the M17 review? I wish I had a drum roll. I don't. The answer is no, because there's your next movie review. This was another film that I got to see just before my trip, as a matter of fact. And so shout out to A&T. I know you saw it as well. Candidly, I might have liked this one a little bit more than Oppenheimer. Now, this one was also incredibly long. And maybe that was the joke Shadow was making. Here you are. It's in here somewhere. But I didn't love this one either. And the reason I didn't love this one either is because, again, I think the length of the movie was too much. And spoiler alert, although not really, this movie doesn't conclude. It's kind of a cliffhanger to the next one that's coming. And so I thought to myself, man, you made a 3.5 hour movie damn near, and you didn't even finish the storyline. Now, on the one hand, that's cool because it progresses the franchise. But I like a nice conclusion. At least, feed me. Give me something to look forward to. But shout out to Tom Cruise. He does these stunts. Now look, we've said this on the show before. I don't think the man misses. You would be very, very hard pressed to name a Tom Cruise film that wasn't good. I mean, many of them are great, but not good. I think you'd be hard pressed to do that. And there's so many. But Mission Impossible, at least there was more action. Now, some of the stunts over the top, but that's part of the game, right? And I think that just like our friend John Wick, Ethan Hunt probably should have got several times throughout, but I won't spoil anything for you. I would encourage you to see this one. This one I think may be a theater experience. Probably Oppenheimer too, for what it's worth. I think you should probably see them both in the theater if you have the option. But anyway, there you go. That's what you get from me today. 2 films, arguably both great, but one did it for me more than the other. Definitely over the top, but nowhere near Fast and Furious over the top. Fair enough. I think that's fair. I couldn't even bear to watch the last Fast and Furious. I think I started it and just turned it off. Family. I just couldn't do it. But Tom Cruise, he doesn't miss. Those were the big highlights. There was something else to mention with regards to having been home in the States. It was super duper hot. I don't know what's going on in the world, but it was over the top hot. How about that? Both Denver and Los Angeles. And it was a different kind of heat. It was, that dry, almost desert-like heat. But so in that respect, I was happy to come on back to northern Norway, where the air's crisp and the beer flows like wine. Women instinctively flock. Salmon Capistrano. If you know, you know. That's pretty much it. There's not a whole lot to talk about. We're back at work. We're catching up. Shout out to the crew. Shout out to the family. Bam. I appreciate y'all being in the chat today. Although not so active, Shadow and Chucha. Where y'all at? Huh? This is what it sounds like for y'all. But that's all right. Maybe you're just getting ready for The Witcher. And so without further ado, we're going to get into that. Norway's making you weak. Dade County. Shout out to 305. Though we rep for the 850. And not for nothing, I think you and I need to get back on the podcast thing, man. I know that there's at least a couple of stories, and I won't steal your thunder. But I know you had a tough flight recently, and so I'd love the opportunity to discuss that kind of live and on air, because I think it's a great story with a wonderful ending and a great outcome. So don't really have anything to go with that, but there it is. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, the real reason you've come to the show, most of you anyway, and you could probably leave at this point, but here we go. Oh yeah, we're back for another chapter read. Candidly, this is a pickup from our last read. I'm gonna give you the recap to the best of my ability. Long story short, truth be told, we're at a banquet. We're at the Queen's feast. We've been called in, and I think she wants us to do some dirty work, we being Geralt. And we're basically telling her that's not what we're all about. We're a Witcher, we're not a gun for hire, but I'm pretty sure we're going to have to do whatever it is that she wants us to do anyway. So we're at the feast. Let me go ahead and change this lighting. Short story long. Big facts. I'll give you one of these for that. Keep them coming, Ed. And that's what she said. So we're at the feast. Mostly it's been conversation on the low between Geralt and the Queen. And we get to meet these other characters as they come in to the party. And as they're like kind of cutting up around the table, I think that they're all there because the princess is to be married off. And the Queen is kind of maneuvering so as to, I don't know, marry her to like a strong family or a strong entity so as to like offer protection and the like. And then again, I don't fully know why Geralt's there. But the goal is to finish this chapter. There's a few pages, and that's why we had to take a break. Sorry to keep you waiting. As a reminder, the name of the episode is The Voice of Reason 4, and this would be Chapter 2, Continued. That's kind of it. Hopefully, Mom, Shadow, Fedme, Aunt, I see you. Miss Ross, if you're still there. And Eric, I don't know if you're joining us. The goal, I hope, is that this chapter has some, I don't know, juicy nuggets that we can then use to maybe feature a new Geralt of Trivia. Yeah? Because I know some of you are wondering, what's up with those NFTs? Where are the prizes? I'm ready. So cool. But without further ado, let's get into it. The goal is to finish this chapter, wrap this thing up, and then we'll be back hopefully next week for another episode. And we'll stop waiting every 2 weeks. I was traveling. What can I do? Your favorite part and mine. Toss a coin, yeah?
Toss a coin to your witcher, O Valley of Plenty, O Valley of Plenty. Oh.
There he is. I couldn't get to the gift fast enough to make him appear on screen. Okay, as I say, we're still at the banquet. The Queen Regent and Geralt have been talking. It's a pickup. Here we go. A curly-haired servant and a captain of the guards wearing the gold and blue of Sintra ran up to Visigurd. The marshal, frowning, listened to their report, rose, and leant down from behind the throne to murmur something to the queen. Calanthe glanced at Geralt and answered with a single word. Visigurd leant over even further and whispered something more. The queen looked at him sharply and, without a word, slapped her armrest with an open palm. The marshal bowed and passed the command to the captain of the guards. Geralt didn't hear it, but he did notice that Mousak was wriggling. It does say wriggled. Mousak, I think it's wiggled. Mousak wriggled uneasily and glanced at Pavetta. The princess was sitting motionless, her head lowered. Heavy footsteps, each accompanied by the clang of metal striking the floor. It could be heard over the hum of the table. Everyone raised their heads and turned. The approaching figure was clad in armor of iron sheets and leather treated with wax. His convex, angular, black and blue breastplate overlapped a segmented apron and a short thigh pad. The armor-plated brassards bristled with sharp steel spikes, and his visor, with its densely grated screen, extended out in the shape of a dog's muzzle. This was covered with spikes as well, like conker casing. Clattering and grinding, the strange guest approached the table and stood motionless in front of the throne. "Noble queen, honored gentlemen," said the newcomer, bowing stiffly. "Please forgive me for disrupting your ceremonious feast. I am Urchion of Erenwald." "Greetings, Urchion of Erenwald," said Calanthe. "Please take your place at the table. In Sintra, we welcome every guest." "Thank you, your majesty." Urchion of Erenwald bowed once more and touched his chest with a fist clad in an iron gauntlet. "But I haven't come to Sintra as a guest, but on a matter of great importance and urgency. If your majesty permits, I will present my case immediately, without wasting your time." "Urchion of Erenwald," said the queen sharply, "a praiseworthy concern about our time does not justify lack of respect, and such is your speaking to us from behind an iron trellis. Please remove your helmet and we'll endure the time wasted while you do." "My face, your majesty, must remain hidden for the time being, with your permission." An angry ripple, punctuated here and there with the odd curse, ran through the gathered crowd. Mousak, lowering his head, moved his lips silently. The Witcher felt the spell electrify the air for a second, felt it stir his medallion. Calanthe was looking at Urchion, narrowing her eyes and drumming her fingers on her armrest. "Granted," she said finally. I choose to believe your motive is sufficiently important. So, what brings you here, Urcheon without a face?
Thank you, said the newcomer. But I'm unable to suffer the accusation of lacking respect. So I explain that it is a matter of a knight's vows. I am not allowed to reveal my face before midnight strikes.
Calanthe, raising her hand perfunctorily, accepted his explanation. Urcheon advanced, his spiked armor clanging.
15 years ago, he announced loudly, your husband, King Rogner, lost his way while hunting in Erlenwald. Wandering around the pathless tracks, he fell from his horse into a ravine and sprained his leg. He lay at the bottom of a gully and called for help, but the only answer he got was the hiss of vipers and the howling of approaching werewolves. He would have died without the help he received.
I know what happened, the queen affirmed. If you know it too, then I guess you're the one who helped him.
Yes, it is only because of me he returned to you in one piece, and well.
I am grateful to you then, Urcheon of Erlenwald. That gratitude is none the lesser for the fact that Rogner, gentleman of my heart and bed, has left this world. Tell me, if the implication that your aid was not disinterested does not offend another of your knightly vows, how can I express my gratitude?
You well know my aid was not disinterested. You know, too, that I have come to collect the promised reward for saving the king's life.
Oh, yes? Calanthe smiled, but green sparks lit up her eyes. So you found a man at the bottom of a ravine, defenseless, wounded, at the mercy of vipers and monsters. And only when he promised you a reward did you help? And if he didn't want to, or couldn't promise you something, you'd have left him there? And to this day, I wouldn't know where his bones lay? How noble. No doubt your actions were guided by a particularly chivalrous vow at the time. The murmur around the hall grew louder. And today you have come for your reward, Urcheon? Continued the queen, smiling even more ominously. After 15 years. No doubt you are counting the interest accrued over this period. There isn't the dwarves' bank, Urcheon. You say Rogner promised you a reward? Ha, well, it will be difficult to get him to pay you. It would be simpler to send you to him, into the other world, to reach an agreement over who owes what. I loved my husband too dearly, Urcheon, to forget that I could have lost him then, 15 years ago, if he hadn't chosen to bargain with you. The thought of it arouses rather ill feeling towards you. Masked newcomer, do you know that here in Sintra, in my castle, and in my power, you are just as helpless and close to death as Rogner was then, at that bottom of the ravine? What will you propose? What price? What reward will you offer if I promise you to leave here alive?
The medallion on Geralt's neck twitched.
The Witcher caught Mousesack's clearly uneasy gaze. He shook his head a little and raised his eyebrows questioningly. The Druid also shook his head and, with a barely perceptible move of his curly beard, indicated Urcheon. Geralt wasn't sure.
Your words, your majesty, called Urcheon, are calculated to frighten me, to kindle the anger of the honorable gentlemen gathered here, and the contempt of your pretty daughter, Pavetta. But above all, your words are untrue, and you know it.
You accuse me of lying like a dog. An ugly grimace crept across Calanthe's lips.
You know very well, your majesty, the newcomer continued adamantly. What happened then in Ehrenwald? You know, Rogner once saved, vowed his own will to give me whatever I ask for. I call upon everyone to witness my words. When the king, rescued from his misadventure, reached his retune, he asked me what I demanded, and I answered. I asked him to promise me whatever he had left at home without knowing or expecting it. The king swore it would be so, and on his return to the castle, he found you, Calanthe, in labor. Yes, your majesty, I waited for 15 years, and the interest on my reward has grown. Today I look at the beautiful Pavetta and see that the wait has been worth it. Gentlemen and knights, some of you have come to Sintra to ask for the princess's hand. You have come in vain. For the day of her birth, by the power of the royal oath, the beautiful Pavetta has belonged to me.
An uproar burst forth among the guests. Some shouted, some swore, someone else thumped his fist on the table and knocked the dishes over. Wield Hill of Strept pulled a knife out of the roast lamb and waved it about. Cratch and Crate, bent over, was clearly trying to break a plank from the table trestle.
That's unheard of, yelled Visegerd. What proof do you have? Proof!
The queen's face, exclaimed Urchion, extending his hand. Oh, apologies.
The queen's face,
exclaimed Urchion, extending his hand,
is the best proof.
Pavetta sat motionless, not raising her head. The air was growing thick with something very strange. The Witcher's medallion was tearing at its chain under his tunic. He saw the queen summon a page and whisper a short command. Geralt couldn't hear it, but he was puzzled by the surprise on the boy's face, and the fact that the command had to be repeated. The page ran towards the exit. The uproar at the table continued as Ace Tersache turned to the queen.
Calanthe, he said calmly, is what he says true?
And if it is, the queen muttered through her teeth, biting her lips and picking at the green sash on her shoulder, so what?
If what he says is true,
Ace frowned,
then the promise will have to be kept.
Is that so?
Or am I to understand,
the islander asked grimly,
that you treat all promises this lightly, including those which have etched themselves so deeply in my memory?
Geralt, who had never expected to see Calanthe blush deeply, with tears in her eyes and trembling lips, was surprised.
Ace, whispered the queen, this is different. Is it really?
Oh, you son of a bitch! Craich and Crake yelled unexpectedly, jumping up.
The last fool who said I'd acted in vain was pinched apart by crabs at the bottom of Alenker Bay. I didn't sail here from Skellig to return empty-handed. A suitor has turned up. Some son of a trollop. Someone bring me a sword and give this idiot some iron. We'll soon see who... Maybe you should just shut up, Crash.
Ace snapped scathingly, resting both fists on the table.
Drake Bondu! I render you responsible for his future behavior. Are you going to silence me too, Tersache?
Shouted Rainfarm of a tree, standing up. A lot of names happening here.
Who's going to stop me from washing the insult thrown at my prince away with blood, and his son Wildhelm, the only man worthy of Pavetta's hand in bed? Bring the swords. I'll show that Urchion, or whatever he's called, how we of a tree take revenge for such abuse. I wonder whether anybody or anything can hold me back. Yes, regard for good manners, said Ace Tersache calmly. It is not proper to start a fight here or challenge anyone without permission from the lady of the house. What is this? The throne room of Sintra, an inn where you can punch each other's heads and stab each other with knives as fancy takes you? Everybody started to shout again, to curse and swear and wave their arms about. But the uproar suddenly stopped, as if cut by a knife, at the short, furious roar of an enraged bison. "Yes," said Contd, clearing his throat and rising from his chair. "East has it wrong. This doesn't even look like an inn anymore. It's more like a zoo, so a bison should be left home here. Honorable Calanthe, allow me to offer my opinion." "A great many people, I see," said Calanthe, in drawling voice, "have an opinion on this problem and are offering it even without my permission. Strange that you aren't interested in mine. And in my opinion, this bloody castle will sooner collapse on my head than I give my Pavetta to this crank. I haven't the least intention—" "Rowanger's oath! Fuck me. Rowanger's oath!" Urchion began. But the queen silenced him, banging her golden goblet on the table. "Rowanger's oath means about as much to me as last year's snows. And as for you, Urchion, I haven't decided whether to allow Cratch or Rain Farm to meet you outside or to simply hang you. You're greatly influencing my decision with your interruption." Geralt, still disturbed by the way his medallion was quivering, looked around the hall. Suddenly, he saw Pavetta's eyes, emerald green, like her mother's. The princess was no longer hiding them beneath her long lashes. She swept them from Mousesack to the Witcher, ignoring the others. Mousesack, bent over, was wriggling and muttering something. Contd, still standing, cleared his throat meaningfully. "Speak," the queen nodded, "but be brief." "As you command, your majesty. Noble Calanthe, and you knights, indeed, Urchion of Erenwald, made a strange request of King Rowanger, a strange reward to demand when the king offered him this wish. But let us not pretend we've never heard of such requests, of the law of surprise, as old as humanity itself, of the price a man who saves another can demand, of the granting seemingly impossible wish. You will give me the first thing that comes to greet you. It might be a dog, you'll say, a halberdier at the gate, even a mother-in-law impatient to holler at her son-in-law when he returns home. Or, you'll give me what you find at home yet don't expect. After a long journey, honorable gentlemen, and an unexpected return, this could be a lover in the wife's bed. But sometimes it's a child marked out by destiny."
"Briefly, Contd," Calanthe frowned.
"As you command. Sirs, have you not heard of children marked out by destiny? Was it not the legendary hero Zatred Vorta, given to the dwarves as a child because he was the first person his father met on his return? And Mad Dai, who demanded a traveler give him what he left at home without knowing it. That surprise was the famous Supri, who later liberated Mad Dai from the curse which weighed him down. Remember Zivelana, who became the queen of Matina with the help of the gnome Rumpelstat, and in return promised him her firstborn. Zivelana didn't sleep her promise when Rumpelstat came for his reward, and by using spells, she forced him to run away. Not long after that, both she and the child died of the plague. You do not dice with destiny, and you do not dice with impunity."
"Do not threaten me, Contd," Calanthe grimaced. "Midnight is close, the time for ghosts. Can you remember any more legends from your undoubtedly difficult childhood? If not, then sit down."
"I ask your grace," the Baron turned up his long whiskers, "to allow me to remain standing. I'd like to remind everybody of another legend. It's an old, forgotten legend. We've all probably heard it in our difficult childhoods. In this legend, the kings kept their promises, and we, poor vassals, are only bound to kings by royal word. Treaties, alliances, our privileges and fiefs all rely on it. And now, are we to doubt all of this? Doubt the inviolability of the king's word? Wait until it's worth as much as yesteryear's snow. If this is how things are to be, then a difficult old age awaits us after our difficult childhoods.
Shout out to my guy Scooty in the chat. I see you, big dog. All right, let's pause here. I think. Hold on one second. I felt like this goddamn chat, it just keeps going on and on. Okay, we still have several more pages. So let's check this out. There's something brewing, and for those of you that have seen the series, you probably well know there's this bargain that gets made, right? It's like the law of surprise. And the way it works is when you owe somebody, I think, the debt of your life, if they save it, then you give them whatever's unexpected when you return home. And as it turns out, when the king went back home, the queen was with child, and therefore the prize is the princess, who at the time was unborn. And I guess this knight or Urcheon, he's coming to collect. Let me know when you get to chapter 11. Only chapter I know about. All right, one time for you, big dog. All right, let's get back into it. Whose side are you on, Contd? Oh, my fault. That was the queen's voice. Whose side are you on, Contd? Hollered Rainfarm of a tree. Silence! Let him speak. This cackler full of hot air insults Her Majesty. The Baron of Teague is right. Silence, Calanthe said suddenly, getting up. Let him finish. I thank you graciously, bowed Contd, but I have just finished. Silence fell, strange after all of the commotion in his words. Calanthe was still standing. Geralt didn't think anyone else had noticed her hand shake as she wiped her brow. My lords, she said finally, you deserve an explanation. Yes, this Urcheon speaks the truth. Rogner did swear to give him that which he did not expect. It looks as if our lamented king was an oaf as far as a woman's affairs are concerned, and couldn't be trusted to count on 9. He confessed the truth on his deathbed because he knew what I'd do to him if he'd admitted it earlier. He knew what a mother, whose child is disposed of now so recklessly, is capable of. The knights and magnates remained silent. Urcheon stood motionless, like a spiked iron statue. And Contd, continued Calanthe. Well, Contd has reminded me that I am not a mother, but a queen. Very well then. As queen, I shall convene a council tomorrow. Cintra is not a tyranny. The council will decide whether a dead king's oath is to decide the fate of the successor to the throne. It will decide whether Pavetta and the throne of Cintra are to be given to a stranger or to act according to the kingdom's interests. Calanthe was silent for a moment, looking askance at Geralt. And as for the noble knights who have come to Cintra in the hope of the princess's hand, it only remains for me to express my deep regret at the cruel disrespect and dishonor that they have experienced here, at the ridicule poured on them. I am not to blame. Amidst the hum of voices which rumbled through the guests, the Witcher managed to pick out Ace Tersace's whisper. I gotta move this a little bit.
On all the gods of the sea, sighed the islander, this isn't befitting. This is open incitement to bloodshed. Calanthe, you're simply setting them against each other. Be quiet, Ace, hissed the queen furiously, because I'll get angry.
Mousesack's black eyes flashed as, with a glance, the druid indicated Rainfarm of a tree, who, with gloomy, grimacing face, was preparing to stand. Geralt reacted immediately, standing up first and banging his chair noisily.
Maybe it will prove unnecessary to convene the council,
he said in ringing tones. Everyone grew silent, watching him with astonishment. Geralt felt Pavetta's emerald eyes on him. He felt Urchion's gaze fall on him from behind lattice of his black visor, and he felt the force surging like flood wave and solidifying in the air. He saw how, under the influence of this force, the smoke from the torches and oil lamps was taking on fantastic forms. He knew that Mousesack saw it too. He also knew that nobody else saw it.
I said, he repeated calmly, that convening the council may not prove necessary. You understand what I have in mind, Urchion of Ehrenwald?
The Spike Knight took 2 grating steps forward.
I do,
he said, his words hollow beneath his helmet.
It would take a fool not to understand. I heard what the merciful and noble Lady Calanthe said a moment ago. She has found an excellent way of getting rid of me. I accept your challenge, knight unknown to me. I don't recall challenging you, said Geralt. I don't intend to duel you, Urchion of Erlenwald.
Geralt, called Calanthe, twisting her lips and forgetting to call the Witcher Ravix. Don't overdo it. Don't put my patience to the test. Or mine, added Rainfarn, ominously. Cratch and Crate growled, and Ace Tersache meaningfully showed him a clenched fist. Crash growled even louder.
Everyone heard, spoke Geralt. Baron Tig, tell us about the famous heroes taken from their parents on the strength of the oath that Urchion received from King Rogner. But why should anyone want such an oath? You know the answer, Urchion of Erlenwald. It creates a powerful, indissoluble tie of destiny between the person demanding the oath and its object, the child's surprise. Such a child, marked by blind fate, can be destined for extraordinary things. It can play an incredibly important role in the life of a person to whom fate has tied it. That is why, Urchion, you demanded the prize you claim today. You don't want the throne of Sintra. You want the princess.
It's exactly as you say, knight unknown to me, Urchion laughed out loud. That's exactly why I claim. Give me the one who is my destiny. Sorry, my voices are like, there's so many fucking characters in these scenes.
That, said Geralt, will have to be proved.
You dare doubt it? After the Queen confirmed the truth of my words? After what you've just said?
Yes, because you didn't tell us everything. Rogner knew the power of the law of surprise and the gravity of the oath he took, and he took it because he knew law and custom have a power which protects such oaths, ensuring they are only fulfilled when the force of destiny confirms them. I declare, Urchion, that you have no right to Princess as yet. You will win her only when...
When what?
When the princess herself agrees to leave with you. This is what the law of surprise states. It is the child's, not the parent's consent, which confirms the oath, which proves that the child was born under the shadow of destiny. That's why you returned after 15 years, Urchion. That's the condition King Rogner stipulated in his oath.
Who are you?
I am Geralt of Rivia.
Who are you, Geralt of Rivia, to claim to be an oracle in matters of laws and customs? He knows this law better than anyone else, Mousesack said in a hoarse voice.
because it applied to him once. He was taken from his home because he was what his father hadn't expected to find on his return. Because he was destined for other things. And by the power of destiny, he became what he is. And what is he? A witcher.
In the silence that reigned, the guardhouse bell struck, announcing midnight in a dull tone. Everyone shuddered and raised their heads. Mousak watched Geralt with surprise, but it was Urcheon who flinched most notably and moved uneasily. His hands, clad in their armor gauntlets, fell to his sides lifelessly, and the spiked helmet swayed unsteadily. The strange, unknown force suddenly grew thicker, filling the hall like a gray mist. "It's true," said Calanthe. "Geralt, present here, is a witcher. His trade is worthy of respect and esteem. He has sacrificed himself to protect us from monsters and nightmares born in the night, those sent by powers ominous and harmful to man. He kills the horrors and monsters that await us in the forests and ravines, and those which have the audacity to enter our dwellings." Urcheon was silent. "And so," continued the queen, raising her ringed hand, "let the law be fulfilled. Let the oath which you, Urcheon of Erlenwald, insist should be satisfied. Be satisfied. Midnight has struck. Your vow no longer binds you. Lift your visor before my daughter expresses her will, before she decides her destiny. Let her see your face. We all wish to see your face." Urcheon of Erlenwald slowly raised his armored hand, pulled at the helmet's fastenings, grabbed it by the iron horn, and threw it against the floor with a crash. Someone shouted. Someone swore. Someone sucked their breath with a whistle. On the queen's face appeared a wicked, very wicked smile. A cruel smile of triumph. Above the wide semicircular breastplate, two bulbous, black, button eyes looked out. Eyes set to either side of a blunt, elongated muzzle covered in reddish bristles and full of sharp white fangs. Urcheon's head and neck bristled with a brush of short, gray, twitching prickles.
"This is how I look," spoke the creature, "which you well knew, Calanthe. Rogner, in telling you of his oath, wouldn't have omitted describing me. Urcheon of Erlenwald, to whom, despite my appearance, Rogner swore his oath. You prepared well for my arrival, Queen. Your own vassals have pointed out your haughty and contemptuous refusal to keep Rogner's word. When your attempt to set the other suitors on me didn't succeed, you still had a killer witcher in reserve, ready at your right hand. And finally, common low deceit. You wanted to humiliate me, Calanthe. Know that it is yourself you have humiliated."
"Enough!" Calanthe stood up and rested her clenched fist on her hip. "Let's put an end to this. Pavetta, you see who, or rather what, is standing in front of you, claiming you for himself? In accordance with the law of surprise and eternal custom, the decision is yours. Answer. One word from you is enough. Yes, and you become the property, this conquest for this monster. No, and you'll never have to see him again." The force pulsating in the hall was squeezing Geralt's temples like an iron vice, buzzing in his ears, making the hair on his neck stand on end. The Witcher looked at Moussack's whitening knuckles, clenched at the end of the table, at the trickle of sweat running down the queen's cheek, and the breadcrumbs on the table moving like insects, forming runes, dispersing and again gathering into one word: careful. "Pavetta," Calanthe repeated. Answer! Do you choose to leave with this creature? Pavetta raised her head. Yes. The force filling the hall echoed her, rumbling hollowly in the arches of the vault. No one, absolutely no one, made the slightest sound. Calanthe very slowly collapsed into her throne. Her face was completely expressionless. Everyone heard, Urchion's calm voice resounded in the silence. You too, Calanthe, as did you, Witcher. Cunning, hired thug. My rights have been established. Truth and destiny have triumphed over lies and deviousness. What do you have left, noble queen? Disguised Witcher? Cold steel? No one answered. I'd like to leave with Pavetta immediately, continued Urchion, his bristles stirring as he snapped his jaws shut. But I won't deny myself one small pleasure. It is you, Calanthe, who will lead your daughter here to me and place her white hand in mine. Calanthe slowly turned her head to the Witcher's direction. Her eyes expressed a command. Geralt didn't move, sensing that the force condensing in the air was concentrated on him. Only on him. Now he understood. The queen's eyes narrowed. Her lips quivered. What? What's this? Yelled Cassian Crate, jumping up. Her white hand in his? The princess with this bristly stinker? With this pig snout? And I wanted to fight him like a knight, Rainfarm chimed in. This horror, this beast. Loose the dogs on him, the dogs! Guards! Cried Calanthe. Everything happened all at once. Cassian Crate seized a knife from the table and knocked his chair over with a crash. Obeying Ace's command, Dragbon Du, without a thought, whacked the back of his head with his bagpipes as hard as he could. Cash dropped onto the table with a sturgeon and gray sauce and the few remaining arched ribs of roast boar. Rainfarm leapt towards Urchion, flashing a dagger down from his sleeve. Contd, springing up, kicked a stool under his feet, which Rainfarm jumped agilely, but a moment's delay was enough. Urchion deceived him with a short feint and forced him to his knees with a mighty blow from his armored fist. Contd fell to snatch the dagger from Rainfarm, but was stopped by Prince Wilhelm, who clung to his thigh like a bloodhound. Guards, armed with... I don't know what this is. Guisarms? I don't know what that is. Guisarms and lances ran in from the entrance. Calanthe, upright and threatening, with an authoritative, abrupt gesture, indicated Urchion to them. Pavetta started to shout, aced her chase to curse. Everyone jumped up, not quite knowing what to do. Kill him! Shouted the queen. Urchion, huffing angrily and baring his fangs, turned to face the attacking guards. He was unarmed, but clad in spiked steel, from which the points of the guy's arms bounced with a clang. But the blows knocked him back, straight into Rainfarm, who was just getting up, and immobilized him by grabbing his legs. Urchion let out a roar, and with an iron elbow guard, deflected the blades aimed at his head. Rainfarm jabbed him with his dagger, but the blades slid off the breastplate. The guards, crossing their spear shafts, pinned him to the sculpted chimney. Rainfarm, who was hanging onto his belt, found a chink in the armor and dug the dagger into it. Urchion curled up. Dunny! Pavetta shrilled as she jumped onto the chair. The Witcher, sword in hand, sprang onto the table and ran towards the fighting men, knocking plates, dishes, and goblets all over the place. He knew there wasn't much time. Pavetta's cries were sounding more and more unnatural. Rainfarm was raising his dagger to stab again. Geralt cut, springing from the table into a crouch. Rainfarm wailed and staggered to the wall. The Witcher spun, and with the center of his blade slashed a guard who was trying to dig the sharp tongue of his lance between Urchion's apron and breastplate. The guard tumbled to the ground, losing his helmet. More guards came running in from the entrance. "This is not befitting!" roared Ace Tershash, grabbing a chair. He shattered the unwieldy piece of furniture against the floor with great force, and with what remained in his hand, threw himself at those advancing on Urchion. Urchion, caught by two Gazarm hooks at the same time, collapsed with a clang. He cried out and huffed as he was dragged along the floor. A third guard raised his lance to stab down at Geralt, but he cut him in the temple with the point of his sword. Those dragging Urchion stepped back quickly, throwing down their grimaces, and while those approached from the entrance backed away, the remains of the chair, brandished by Ace like a magic sword. That was not the way to read that sentence. I'm going to try one more time. Those dragging Urchion stepped back quickly, throwing down their Gizarms, while those approaching from the entrance backed away from the remnants of chair, brandished by Ace like the magic sword Balmor in the hand of the legendary Zatria Voruta. A lot of fucking crazy words. Pavetta's cries reached a peak and suddenly broke off. Geralt, sensing what was about to happen, fell to the floor watching for a greenish flash. He felt an excruciating pain in his ears, heard a terrible crash, and a horrifying wail ripped from numerous throats. And then the princess's even, monotonous, and vibrating cry. The table, scattering dishes and food all around, was raising and spinning. Heavy chairs were flying around the hall and shattering against the walls. Tapestries and hangings were flapping, raising clouds of dust. Cries and the dry crack of Gizarm shafts snapping like sticks from the entrance. The throne, with Calanthe sitting in it, sprang up and flew across the hall like an arrow, smashing into the wall with a crash and falling apart. The queen slid to the floor like a ragged puppet. Eastershash, barely on his feet, threw himself towards her, took her in his arms, and sheltered her from the hailing pelting against the walls with the floor in his body. A lot of crazy shit happening right now. Geralt, grasping the medallion in his hand, slithered as quickly as he could towards Mousesack, miraculously still on his knees, who was lifting a short hawthorn wand with a rat skull affixed to the tip. On the wall behind the druid, a tapestry depicting the siege and fire of Fortress Ortgar was burning with a very real flame. Pavetta wailed. Turning round and round, she lashed everything and everybody with her cries as if with a whip. Anyone who tried to stand tumbled to the ground or was flattened against the wall. An enormous silver sauceboat in the shape of a many-oared vessel with an upturned bow came whistling through the air in front of Geralt's eyes and knocked down the voivode with the hard-to-remember name just as he was trying to dodge it. Plaster rained down silently as the table rotated beneath the ceiling, with Cash and Crate flattened on it and throwing down vile curses. Geralt crawled to Mousesack as they hid behind the heap formed by Fodcat of Strept, a barrel of beer, Drogodar, a chair, and Drogodar's loot. "It's pure primordial force!" the druid yelled over the racket and clatter. "She's got no control over it!" "I know," Geralt yelled back. A roast pheasant with a few striped feathers still stuck in its rump fell from nowhere and thumped him in the back. "She has to be restrained! The walls are starting to crack! I can see! Ready? Yes! 1, 2, now!" They both hit her simultaneously. Geralt with the sign of Ard, and Mousesack with a terrible 3-stage curse powerful enough to make the floor melt. The chair on which the princess was standing disintegrated into splinters. Pavetta barely noticed. She hung in the air within a transparent green sphere. Without ceasing to shout, she turned her head towards them, and her petite face shrunk into a sinister grimace.
By all the demons, roared Mousesack. Careful, shouted the Witcher, curling up. Block her, Mousesack. Block her, it's the end of us. The table thudded heavily to the ground, shattering its trestle and everything beneath it. Cash and Crate, who was lying on the table, was thrown into the air. A heavy rain of plates and remnants of food fell. Crystal carapaces exploded as they hit the ground. The cornice broke away from the wall, rumbling like thunder, making the floors of the castle quake. Everything's letting go, Mousesack shouted, aiming his wand at the princess. The whole force is falling on us! Geralt, with a blow of his sword, deflected a huge double-pronged fork which was flying straight at the druid. Block it, Mousesack! Emerald eyes sent 2 flashes of green lightning at them. They coiled into blinding, whirling funnels from the centers of which the force, like a battering ram which exploded the skull, put out the eyes and paralyzed the breath, descended upon them. Together with the force, glass, platters, candlesticks, bones, nibbed of loaves, bread, planks, slats, and smoldering firewood from the hearth pouring all over them, crying wildly like a great this is a tough word. Capersale. I'm sure I'm not saying that one right. Moving on. Smoldering firewood, Castellan, Huxo flew over their heads. The enormous head of a boiled carp splattered against Geralt's chest onto the boar, passant sable, and damsel of Fohorn. I mean, could you make it any more complicated? Jesus. Through Mousesack's wall-shattering curses, through his own shouting and the wailing of the wounded, the din, clatter, and racket, through Pavetta's wailing, the Witcher suddenly heard the most terrible sound. Kudkadak, on his knees, was strangling Dragbondu's bagpipes with his hands, while, with his head thrown back, he shouted over the monstrous sounds emerging from the bag. Wailing and roaring, cackled and croaked, bawled and squawked into a cacophony of sounds made by all known, unknown, domestic, wild, and mythical animals. I don't fucking know what's happening at this point. All right, 2 more pages. Hope y'all are still with me. A lot of crazy shit happening. Pavetta fell silent, horrified, and looked at the Baron with her mouth agape. The force eased off abruptly. Now! Yelled Mousesack, waving his wand. Now, Witcher! They hit her. The greenish sphere surrounding the princess burst under their blow like a soap bubble, and the vacuum instantly sucked in the force, raging through the room. Pavetta flopped heavily onto the ground and started to weep. After the pandemonium, a moment's silence rang in their ears. Then, with difficulty, laboriously, voices started to break through the rubble and destruction, through the broken furniture and the inert bodies. Oh, God. I'm not sure what language this is. Here we go. Kashapars, Gul Obagrel, Malo Kash, spat Cash and Crate, spraying blood from his bitten lip. Control yourself, Crash, sobbed Mousesack with an effort, shaking Buckwheat from his front. There are women present. Calanthe, my beloved Calanthe, Eastersache said in the pauses between kisses. The queen opened her eyes, but didn't try to free herself from his embrace. Haste, people are watching, she said. Let them watch. Would somebody care to explain what that was? Asked Marshal Visigurd, crawling from beneath a fallen tapestry. No, said the Witcher. A doctor! Windhalm of a tree leaning over Rain Farm shouted shrilly. Water! Wield Hill, one of the brothers from Strep called, stifling the smoldering tapestry with his jacket. Water, quickly! And beer! A few knights, still able to stand, were trying to lift Pavetta, but she pushed her hands aside. She got up on her own and unsteadily walked towards the hearth. There, with his back resting against the wall, sat Urshion, awkwardly trying to remove his blood-smeared armor. The youth of today, snorted Mousesack, looking in their direction. They start early. They've only got one thing on their minds. What's that? Don't you know, Witcher, that a virgin, that is one who's untouched, wouldn't be able to use the Force? To hell with her virginity, muttered Geralt. Where did she get such a gift anyway? Neither Calanthe nor Rogner. She inherited it. Missing a generation, and no mistake, said the druid. Her grandmother, Adlia, she could raise a drawbridge with the twitch of her eyebrows. Hey, Geralt, look at that! She still hasn't had enough. Calanthe, supported by Ace Tersace's arm, indicated the wounded Urshion to the guards. Geralt and Mousesack approached quickly, but unnecessarily. The guards recoiled from the semi-reclining figure and whispered and muttered. They backed away. Urshion's monstrous snout softened, blurred, and was beginning to lose its contours. The spikes and bristles rippled, and they became black, shiny, wavy hair, with a beard which bordered a pale, angular, masculine face, this dominated by a prominent nose. What? Stammered Ace Tersace. What's that? Urshion? Dunny, said Pavetta softly. Calanthe turned away with pursed lips. Cursed? Murmured Ace. But how? Midnight has struck, said the Witcher. Just this minute. The bell we heard before was early. The bell ringer's mistake. Am I right, Calanthe? Right, groaned the man called Dunny, answering instead of the queen, who had no intention of replying anyway. But maybe instead of standing there talking, someone could help me with this armor and call a doctor. That madman Rainfarm stabbed me under the ribs. What do we need a doctor for? Said Mousesack, taking out his wand. Enough! Calanthe straightened and raised her head proudly. Enough of this! When all this is over, I want to see you in my chamber. All of you, as you stand, Ace, Pavetta, Mousesack, Geralt, and you, Dunny. Mousesack? Yes, your majesty. That wand of yours, I've bruised my backbone and thereabouts. At your command, your majesty. That was a lot. All right, you get this?
Toss a coin to your witcher, O Valley of Plenty, O Valley of Plenty. Oh.
Hopefully there's a couple of y'all still around. If not, I can't say that I blame you. Shout out to Ms. Ross. Yeah, you're still here. I'm just happy to be done with that chapter for one. That was a lot. Though it did pick up. Business definitely picked up for us. I know if you've seen the show, then you kind of were able to follow along because this scene is definitely in season 1. The Law of Surprise. We'll recap it again next week, but I'm confident we've got enough to maybe play a game. So hopefully if you weren't here and you're eligible, you'll rewatch the VOD. But very briefly, sounds like a werewolf, right? And the queen, she's a cold piece, man. She tried to get the bell ringer to ring it early so he would take off his helmet and look grotesque. But Pavetta is in love. Dang, 2 minutes. Okay, well, we appreciate you being here, Mom. One time for you. You can rewatch it. I'll probably fill you in. But yeah, so cunning. I'm not mad at her. She's just probably trying to protect her daughter in the end. Because who wants to give away her daughter to a werewolf, after all? But maybe it's a curse or a spell and we can break it. Yep, thank God for the replay. One time, bang. But at least there was some magic and spellcraft happening. There's so many names, and these names are not the easiest. I mean, I'm trying my best to pronounce them, but if you were to read them, you'd be like, what does that say? And then there was this line where Buddy spoke in like a different language, I think. I don't know if it was a spell or a curse or if he was just talking slick. But anyway, we got through it. And Pavetta the princess is promised to this Dunny, I guess it is. Fucking Dunny. Maybe he's Scottish. I don't know. And shout out to Geralt. Geralt's such a cold dude. He didn't involve himself. He could have. He didn't. And then it all went crazy. So Pavetta is like a sorceress or something. She's got some kind of powers. And the Force is strong with this one. So we did it. I'm happy about it. There you go. That's your reading for the day, ladies and gentlemen. And we are approaching an hour and 11 minutes. So that's enough of me. I got things to do. Probably y'all too. If you're here, thank you so much. If you weren't here and wanted to be, we missed you. And that's it. Came back from the US, had a great conference. New record out on SoundCloud. Check that out one time. Oppenheimer, didn't love it. It was good. Not great in my opinion. It's just my opinion. Probably going to win some Oscars. Shout out to Chris Nolan and the team. And Mission Impossible. Ethan Hunt. Great franchise. I recommend that one too. I'm gone. That's enough. As they say in Norway, how that. Peace out. If you were here, thank you again.
Thank you. Far too kind.
We testing the game.
We testing the game.
And we're gone.
Oh,
Love
yeah.
y'all. Bye.